The body of this man is so large that just one step makes the earth tremble. They didn't believe in earthquakes, but when young Hein walked, it seemed like the world was ending. Everyone was completely astonished, but he's still young and only weighs a few tons, so he dreamed of becoming the supreme leader of martial arts. But even a mosquito landing on his neck was enough to make him stagger and fall. The fall of his gigantic body could be heard from the other side of the country. Is he the one causing the earthquakes in Japan? Your body is fat and useless. But he knew that at some point someone would come along and destroy all of Marim. The ungrateful servant who will appear is truly incredible, and was able to unify the entire Marim. His parents also died in the chaos he caused. Therefore, someone as ordinary and weak as him was accepted as a disciple by 6 masters of the main sects, undergoing infernal training, where living was worse than death. They tried to pierce him alive. They tried to freeze him alive. They tried fire. This strengthened his body, and all of this was his master's plan for him to become very powerful. And then he was sent back in time to change the fate of the world, but he never imagined that he would end up in Hyun's fat, useless body, unable to practice martial arts. Back in the present, he was being treated by Jang Sung, while Hyun was thinking about how to defeat the ungrateful servant of the sect who would cause all the chaos. He remembered that he first needed to obtain the virgin ginseng before the ungrateful servant. The doctor and the one responsible for Hyun's care kept arguing about his health, and he couldn't think straight until he finally remembered that the servant would get the virgin ginseng in 6 months. He needed to do something right now. He immediately got up, telling his father that he needed to walk. His father immediately called people to bring a big chair, the biggest available. The people carrying the chair needed to be the strongest, but he refused because he wanted to walk alone. Still, his father immediately called the guards to help him, showing a scene that made the old man's eyes moist. He hadn't walked alone since he was 10 years old. In the following days, he trained very hard, walking around the courtyards for a month, but this ton-heavy body still showed no sign of change. He even got on the scale to check, but not even a whole herd of pigs climbing made Hein budge a bit. The rope on the pig's side even broke, while Hyun tried to remember the name of the servant who would bring chaos. His vassal was trying to console him, saying that losing weight wasn't something that could be done overnight. It was necessary to focus on the diet, reducing sugar intake and increasing protein, and then do exercises to strengthen the muscles. The situation of the young master could take a long time to stabilize, but Hyun didn't care. He just wanted to remember the name of that ungrateful servant. It seems that Hyun lost his memories about the servant when he reincarnated, but anyway, he will appear in Anhui province to look for the virgin ginseng. Maybe he could find him during this opportunity. Thinking about the scene where he would press him there with his invincible strength, he was laughing, completely satisfied, imagining that after dealing with him he would have a quiet life. What a dream. His vassal thinks he must have gone mad as a side effect of losing weight too fast. He was shocked by the sudden change and ran off to call the doctor. He immediately brought the old Jang running to him. Jang Soo-young, who at 30 entered the selection exam to be the emperor's personal physician. He went through a series of excellent tests to become a doctor at the same time. At 50 he attained enlightenment and developed his own medical technique. This was his savior, and the key to making him beautiful with an athletic body. He asked if he could prepare various types of weight loss remedies quickly. The very happy man says that this would indeed be possible, so Hyun asks if it can be done in 6 months, but it would take 3 years for that, and he would have to exercise. Hein killed a mosquito on his doctor's neck, while calling him a charlatan. However, the doctor thought of a method to help him lose weight quickly. If he couldn't walk on land, he should walk underwater. Eventually, he arrived at a nearby stream. The men, after carrying him all the way, were dead tired. Hein slowly bent down to enter the water. He thought that walking underwater would relax his body. The pressure on his bones and muscles would be relieved. Suddenly, he slipped and fell into the deep water. It seemed like he would float thanks to his big balloon belly, but suddenly he sank like a submarine, and his vassal still hadn't reacted, thinking he was happily swimming. But little did his vassal know that he was now an oxygenless submarine. The vassal thought he had the potential to become a professional swimmer, until another vassal warned that this river might have a steeper decline than expected, and he might be sinking like a submarine. The vassal looked at the water without understanding, but now he realized that his master was drowning. He panicked and ran to save him, but basically an ordinary person like them couldn't carry Han's giant body to the shore. Meanwhile, young Han began to lose his strength. Memories of this body at 2 years old clearly surfaced in his head. He had to go through terrible things. His mother died protecting him. At that moment, a girl pulled him to the shore, saving his life.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So they finally returned to their home. The vassal at that moment was facing Han's father's wrath. But after finding out that everything was caused by the doctor, the man, after almost going to the afterlife at the hands of Han's father, explains that the young man was sad after being rejected and decided to lose weight. Then he mentioned the underwater weight loss method, which was very effective. But Hyun's sister, the woman who sent her maid to save him at the waterfall, says that it was not necessary to go so deep into the waterfall to lose weight. Now in Hyun's room, he woke up again, seeing his beautiful older sister. He could not even believe that that beautiful maiden was his sister. Clearly, he was fat and stupid, but he had such a beautiful sister, an exceptional beauty. His sister's maid asked if she could help him up. Hyun thinks it would be impossible for her to do it alone, but she lifted him easily and said it was no big deal. The next day, he was taken to the place set up for his weight loss training. The servants were strangely cheerful. It was odd to see people so happy to carry someone as heavy as a mammoth. When they arrived, everyone was building him an oversized little pool. This was obviously his older sister's idea, so he wouldn't need the dangerous stream anymore. Hyun found it a little weird, but once he saw the pool finished, he was thrilled. People smiled as they watched him walk toward it, and even congratulated him for it. They had all worked so hard over something that seemed pointless. How was any of this fun? He then asked his vassal about his adoptive father, the family head. In the vassal's eyes, that old muscle-bound man looked noble, so he said the patriarch was the great senior disciple everyone respected, a symbol of honesty and virtue. But to Hyun, his father was just an old lucher. The vassal added that whenever famine came, he opened his stores and shared food and clothes with everyone. That was why the whole town respected him. Hyun quickly realized he'd been a burden since childhood. Still, even if he did nothing, being the patriarch's son meant he would always have food and an easy, comfortable life. He burst out laughing, leaving everyone confused. The next day, with the pool finished, Hyun jumped in and sent huge waves everywhere. Then he told his guard to bring a giant stone ball to tie to his leg for training. The guard did as ordered. Once it was tied to Hyun's leg, the man hurled the stone ball with all his might, launching him into the air. This pool was supposed to be shallow, but Hyun dropped like the Titanic to the bottom. There, he began practicing internal energy in a way better suited for water training. His masters had created a method called the spiritual energy heart cultivation technique. Instead of storing energy in the core, it used the heart, and instead of energy veins, it moved through blood vessels. At last, he made it work. Energy spread through the water, and he could sense the current and use it. Then he unleashed the strongest move from Shaolin's ultimate fist art, the mystic fist of 100 feet, and struck the water hard enough to send it into chaos. After that, he kept training underwater like mad, using the knowledge from his past life to improve fast. In just 1 month, he had mastered the technique. Now it was time to go back. First, he needed to check how much weight he'd lost, so he told his vassal to bring the scale. If even losing weight didn't work, how could he face his master again? After a long wait, Hyun's enormous weight had gone down a little. This time at least the rope didn't snap. He laughed in pure joy. His vassal admitted he had doubted him before. Now Hyun had to grow stronger fast to stop the chaos-bringing servant, so he ate everything in sight and cultivated before the food was fully digested. He did this again and again. Then 2 months passed. Now at the bottom of the pool he used a palm technique that made the whole surface churn. His vassal couldn't believe it. He blurted out, "How could that arrogant pig do something like that?" Right then someone behind him asked who he was calling a pig. It was the patriarch, and he was furious. He wanted to kill Hyun's vassal on the spot, but his personal guard told the soldiers to take the man away at once, not to punish him, just to let him rest after all the work he'd done for the young master. The vassal cried tears of joy. Hyun's father was thrilled that his son had used a palm art to send water flying. His son had real martial talent. Even though he wanted him to study instead, he would still support his martial training. Then his expression turned serious. He called for paper and ink to send a message to the palace. The next day, his father handed him the divine manual of heaven. Hyun's face turned serious. This was the manual the emperor himself had given. That alone showed how much influence his father had. His father said he had recently told the emperor that Hyun started learning martial arts, so the emperor personally picked the best manual in the palace for him. What Hyun didn't know was how hard his father pushed for it. The old man kept sending letters to the emperor, asking if he'd forgotten him, all to pressure him into saying yes. Honestly, it sounded more like a jealous lover throwing a fit. On top of that, his brother-in-law became his martial arts teacher. He was Dam Chun-woo, Hyun's older sister's husband. The guy proudly claimed his school was the most famous in the province. Compared to Hyun's real skill, he was probably nothing. But Hyun couldn't reveal that yet, so he had no choice but to kneel and accept his brother-in-law as master. Their father was so touched he nearly cried, wondering when his son had become this respectful. In truth, Hyun just couldn't stand back up without his brother-in-law helping him. Over the next few days, he trained under him, and it felt like torture. Dam Chun-woo kept mocking him, and even called him a killer whale. That made Haya furious, and Hyun actually challenged his own master, saying he'd prove he already understood the basics. Dam Chun-woo thought it was a joke, and burst out laughing, loud enough to make it worse. But when Hyun mocked him and asked if he was scared, he instantly accepted the fight, and sealed his internal energy to make things fair. He still thought that wasn't enough, so he even tied up his own arms before they started. Hyun used his combat technique. It was quick and powerful, though his heavy body still slowed him down. Even his brother-in-law was shocked. How was Hyun blending fighting styles so naturally? Hyun knew his strength had limits, so he had to end it fast. He quickly knocked his brother-in-law down. The man begged for mercy, but Hyun still finished by knocking him out. Later, he was hurt so badly he couldn't even scratch himself, and had to ask his wife Hyun's sister to scratch his head. She didn't mind at all because Hyun was doing great. She had always believed he was a martial arts genius. His sister could barely hide her joy. Another day, Hyun walked through town. He had never seen the people this happy. Merchants traded, children played, and it made him remember the past, when corpses covered the streets. Back then, everyone lived with fear and hunger. The Chaos Servant had destroyed everything and stolen their peace. Now when people saw Hyun, they rushed over in admiration. They couldn't believe the young master was really walking on his own legs. Before long, they started handing him gifts, even food. He had only gone out for a walk, but the townspeople kept feeding him, until he felt heavier and heavier. They were so kind he couldn't bring himself to refuse. That only made him more determined to save the martial world. People this good didn't deserve to die. Then he noticed a martial artist watching him from hiding. The man was surprised the fat boy noticed him at all, but Hyun suddenly appeared behind him and tried to talk. Startled, the man attacked with full force and sent Hyun flying. The guy was clearly no ordinary fighter. The impact knocked Hyun out, and the attacker used that chance to run. When Hyun woke up, he was furious and wanted to kill the man who hit him. People nearby asked if he was okay, and he acted like it was nothing, even though it obviously hurt. That only pushed him harder to become stronger. At the same time, his father and sister were talking. His father wanted to arrange a marriage so Hyun could become a famous general, but his sister thought it was still too soon. They guessed Hyun's sudden change came from breaking off his engagement with Namgung's daughter, a girl who never wanted marriage and only wanted to follow her own martial path. Still, Hyun's father wanted to ask for her hand again soon. Men from the Namgung family were already nearby, trying to think of a polite way to reject him. Meanwhile, Hyun went to the beggar's district to ask about the virgin ginseng, but searched for a long time and found nothing. Someone told him it had been over 20 years since beggars vanished from the area, ever since the patriarch built homes for them. Hyun also wanted information about the state treasure, but now he had no idea where the beggars had gone. At the same time, the Namgung lord was at the provincial office, looking into Hyun's records because of the marriage proposal. A beggar explained that Hyun was a special adopted son, so no business involving him could happen without permission from the central beggar office. They had marked Hyun as celestial rank because he was the patriarch's son. Since the other side was rich and powerful, Namgung immediately threw down a pile of coins and said he'd pay anything. It still wasn't enough because they couldn't break the beggar network's rules. Then he took out a ring, the emperor's seal. Anyone holding it would have the Namgung family's protection. It was worth more than money could measure. Right then, Hyun reached the beggar's headquarters, but the place looked too fancy to belong to beggars. One guard even called him fat and told him to leave because an important guest was inside. Hyun ignored him and tried to walk in, saying he was the patriarch's son. The guard answered by punching him in the face. After the insult, Hyun got truly mad and prepared to pay him back. This time, with a punch of his own. After Namgung handed over the ring, the beggar finally gave him Hyun's information. He was about to read it when a fight broke out outside. Hein was brawling with the guard, and the man had to admit he'd underestimated the fat guy. How could someone that heavy move so fast? Hein said he was using the infinite sky sword, but with the guard's lower-level skill, it didn't matter. Hein said all he wanted was an apology, and he'd let it go. Instead, the man got even angrier after Hein insulted the Namgung clan. The moment the guard drew his sword to threaten him, Hein dropped him in one move. All that followed was the man's scream. Even then, Hein yanked him back up and said he'd teach him some manners. Then he started slapping the guard until someone shouted from above for him to stop. That person quickly landed between them. Hein stepped back, but the newcomer didn't plan to let him leave. Hein instantly sensed he used a brutal martial art, so he knew he had to stop him first. With his heavy body, a direct clash against that style was risky. The brutal style boosted explosive power through rotation, and Hein wanted to use reverse rotation to cancel it out. Then he realized the man before him was his old master, and lost focus. This was the sword master from his past life, so Hein knew those movements well. Even so, he still got beaten down. The man realized this fat boy wasn't ordinary when Hein dispersed the force of the explosive lightning mystic fist. As Hein tried to stand, his eyes burned with killing intent. The man noticed and moved toward him, but Hein's subordinates rushed in to protect him. Soon after, Hein passed out again. Only then did the beggar division chief come out of the building and realize the fat boy in front of him was the patriarch's adopted son. He rushed over and shouted, "Who dares harm the chief's son like this?" At once, everyone turned hateful eyes toward young Namgung, who suddenly looked helpless. He looked at his father and in that moment understood everything. He tore up Hyun's information file. It was useless now, and he knew he'd have to face his father's anger. If he weren't Hyun's future-in-law, he'd already be punished. The beggar division chief dropped to his knees to apologize, and the whole mess kept getting worse. Then the beggar told Namgung he should kneel too and apologize. The man before him was respected even by the emperor. Hearing that, Namgung immediately panicked and knelt to beg for mercy. But Hein's father was still furious. Whoever hurt his favorite son would pay with his life. Then Hein walked out the door, looking a little strange. Apparently his sister had forced that hairstyle on him to make him look more handsome. The beggar division chief was stunned to see Hein walking around just fine after taking a blow from Namgung's son. Hein went straight to the Namgung family head and greeted him, then told Namgung's son that he was his uncle, even though he was only 17. Hein had waited for this moment for a long time because this guy had been his master in a past life, so he slapped him again and again. It hurt, but Hyun didn't care. In the future, this man would become the Sword King, one of the 6 saints of the main sect. For now, Hein finally got a little revenge by pinching his cheek and making him call him uncle. Still, he was genuinely happy to see him again. He was so emotional he even cried, though part of that joy was finally getting revenge. "Why are you bullying me?" After that, everyone sat down to talk. Namgung still hadn't figured out how to reject the marriage contract, but Hyun calmly refused it himself. He said he was busy training to save the world, so this wasn't the right time to marry. He even pointed out that the engagement had been forced by an old promise, without either side agreeing to it. For him, marriage could wait. Hearing that, his father was stunned. Hyun talked about a martial world full of bandits, thieves, and mercenaries doing evil, clearly taking shots at Namgung and the beggar group. They could only stay quiet. No one argued with him, so Hyun stood up and said the marriage issue was over, since both sides agreed. Then he called for the beggar chief, saying they needed a little talk. He still wanted information about the virgin ginseng. He needed to learn the current state of Mirim and the old masters tied to his bloodline. He wanted payback for what they had done. He planned to make them suffer through the same pain he went through in his last life, and it would cost them dearly. A cruel look filled his eyes as he realized it was finally time to take in a disciple. Back at the pool, his vassal told him to return to his room and rest. Hyun barely cared until his sister arrived with her maid and told him the same thing. He needed to rest. His guard then noticed the wooden-faced woman beside her and instantly fell for her. To him, she looked like a dream on two legs. Knowing he planned to enter the Mirim world, his sister asked if he'd forgotten what happened to their mother. She died because of unfinished business there. Hyun simply asked if she really thought he was still weak and unreliable. That caught her by surprise. He promised nothing like that would happen to their clan again, because he would never let it. Hearing that, his sister smiled, happy that he was no longer a little child. She gently rubbed our chubby young master's head, saying he'd really grown a lot, mostly sideways. Why was his sweet sister acting so nice to him? It all felt strange, or maybe this was just what family was supposed to feel like. After that, a lot of time passed, then the pool water began to churn as someone burst out from it. That person declared the time had finally come, and the vassal rushed over, warning his master to be careful. Was Hyun finally about to transform? Our hero turned into a saggy, skinny man. Just look at him. Oh no, really no. Winter came, and we returned to his father's palace. The old man told him not to go out looking that thin, or the wind might carry him off. Still, Hyun was leaving anyway because he needed to train Namgong's son. So he stood up, said he'd visit his uncle in Anhui, and started packing. He was glad to finally have some freedom and hoped to slip away unnoticed. What he didn't know was that a huge carriage was being prepared for him, with more than 20 guards. Outside, everyone looked ready to depart, but to him they were just dead weight. So he came up with a plan. He called everyone in for drinks and announced they would leave tomorrow instead. His sister had planned to say goodbye, but when she heard her brother's voice mixed with a bunch of drunken men, she chose to wait outside. Meanwhile, the guards were drugged by Hyun not with alcohol, but with something that scattered their internal energy. They wouldn't be moving until morning. It was a paralysis poison his doctor had given him for emergencies. He was just about to leave when his sister came over. She hugged him and told him to stay safe, not push too hard, and come home anytime if he got tired or scared. She and their father would always be waiting. Then he took the emperor's finest horse from the stables and began his trip. The next day he reached a small village, but the locals still looked at him like some kind of criminal, at best a chicken thief. So he posed as an officer from the Yu clan, claiming he was searching for something for his master's son. He asked if anyone had seen a red glowing stone on the mountain. The villagers were confused, until an old man said he'd seen that light at sunset while walking the mountain. It looked like a red beam reflecting in the evening sun, and Hyun quickly asked where. The place was called Pagoda Mountain, but the old man warned him not to go. It belonged to the Nine Dragons clan, and they were no normal bandits. They were savage. That only convinced Hyun he was in the right place, so he asked the old man to guide him there. The man was scared at first, but after Hyun pleaded with that near-teary face, he gave in. The two headed into the forest. Once they got close, Hyun refused to risk the old man's life. He only asked for directions, and the man pointed the way. Hein promised he'd be rewarded. At sunset, the red light appeared. It was the virgin ginseng. Hein moved at full speed, crossing the stream, and thinking that if he got discovered, fighting underwater would give him the edge. At last, he reached the Nine Dragons' stronghold. He wanted to avoid a direct fight, so he spread out his spiritual energy to search for the virgin ginseng. Instead, he found a bandit beating a woman, and when her child started crying, the bandit turned toward the girl. For a second, Hyun hesitated, but then he stepped in. In an instant, the bandit dropped dead on the ground. Hyun hadn't meant to interfere, but once he saw the mother and child, he decided to see it through. More guards came out from a nearby hut, and our saggy hero quietly put them all to sleep. After dragging them into a cabin, he found several other villagers locked inside. There was no way he could leave them behind. The problem was, they were terrified and hard to control, so he put the child's mother in charge and quickly laid out a plan. When a guard came into the cabin looking for his missing men, he saw them all asleep and instantly figured the prisoners had done something. He opened his mouth to shout, but the saggy man chopped him in the neck and sent him to sleep with the others. Now the plan could begin. First target, the main guard post. The saggy man crossed the area in the blink of an eye and got beneath the tower. A torch was in one hand, his other hand held a strike packed with power. Pouring spiritual energy into it, he slammed the post with everything he had, toppling the whole guard tower along with the man on watch. No one saw that coming. Then they remembered it was the signal. Everyone had to evacuate and run. At the same time, a figure shot past at crazy speed. The loose-skinned man with a torch. He rushed to ignite one of the cabins. Tonight he meant to turn the place into chaos. In another cabin nearby, several bandits were asleep. They suddenly woke to a harsh glow. Multiple cabins were already burning. Heights appeared in their doorway, boldly announcing that he was the one setting the fires. The loose-skinned man burned that cabin too, then kept running and lighting more buildings while avoiding drawn-out fights. Before long, a group of bandits spotted him. His best move was to run, but another man cut him off. Heitzen slipped past the attack and knocked the man out right away. The loose-skinned man couldn't be stopped, like lightning cutting through the village that night. 2 guards were posted at the gate, and a small tossed stone drew their attention. One bent down to grab it, then saw a bright flash behind him. Only then did the idiot realize the place he was guarding was on fire. Both guards ran off in panic to help, and everyone hiding near the gate used that chance to escape. The girl's mother could only pray that the warrior who saved them would survive, then ran with all her strength toward freedom. Our loose-skinned lord kept sprinting through the camp, trying to pull all attention onto himself, but his energy soon began to fade. Only then did he notice someone beside him, already ready to strike. The attacker was so fast Hyun had no time to avoid it. The blow smashed into the loose-skinned man and sent him flying several meters away. The rock demanded to know who the intruder was, but when the loose-skinned lord stayed silent, more enemies gathered around and even mocked his bandages, asking if he was hiding an ugly face. Guards poured in from every side and the latest hit had done serious damage. The rock told his men to put out the fire while he tried to recruit the loose-skinned lord instead. Hein sat down, buying time to restore his spiritual energy. He stayed seated, catching his breath. Finding strong, fast fighters willing to become bandits wasn't easy. As the leader kept talking, he started wondering about Hyu's strange behavior. Was this man really meditating in the middle of everything? Soon enough, Hyus recovered. His spiritual energy turned terrifying, and he asked why a wolf would ever serve some little puppy. That made the leader instantly order his men to attack, rushing in as if to crush him alive. After a single blow, his mask came off, and the men saw his face hidden under all that loose skin. The fight went on. Hyun was incredibly fast, and even though the bandits weren't especially strong, they worked together well. By combining their attacks, they finally managed to reach the loose-skinned lord and knock him to the ground. Even a lion can fall when too many hyenas swarm it. Realizing he had no choice left, Hyun changed his style. His body grew lighter and more erratic, then he used the immortal step of the 8 drunks to slip through the guards with ease. Even the leader was shocked by those movements. Then Hyun shifted again and used the shadowless flight technique. He shot toward the leader like lightning. They traded blows in a split second, but Han knew it wasn't enough. The leader wouldn't die from that. With his power spent, his only escape was to leap from the cliff. As he fell, he admitted he still wasn't strong enough to beat them all. Still, Han swore he would come back and cut off all their heads, then vanished over the edge while raising his middle finger. That left the rock glaring in fury beneath his eye patch. He ordered his men to go recover the loose-skinned lord's body from below the cliff. But one of his men rushes over with bad news. The hostages are gone. That makes the bald leader even angrier, and now he wants the loose-skinned lord dead even more. Meanwhile, as Hyun falls off the cliff, he dives headfirst. He has only one goal: to hit the water as softly as he can, spinning down like a drill. His real fear is smashing into the bottom with all the force built up from that huge fall. He manages to slow himself, but then something starts dragging him deeper, and once again he sinks like a stone. After the current pulls him along for a long time, he finally gets swept into a cave on the other side. He only wants to rest after that brutal fight, but the energy in his heart suddenly reacts to something nearby. It urges him forward, and soon he realizes what it is: the virgin ginseng. After swimming deeper through the cave, Hyun is stunned by what he finds. Right in front of him is the virgin ginseng, giving off a strong aura. He gets so happy he nearly cries, then remembers the beggar saying it would be easy to find. If he sees that guy again, he might burn him for that lie. Not wasting another second, he rushes over and yanks the ginseng out with his bare hands. This really is the legendary virgin ginseng, and now it belongs to him. He even checks around him, like maybe this is some kind of prank, but no, still soaked and heavy as ever. He happily devours the ginseng. Right away, his spiritual energy starts to surge. The feeling is so good he keeps eating without stopping. Then he sits down to cultivate, thrilled that he can finally rise above everyone who looked down on him. Back at the village, Hyun's vassal is trying to track him down. But since Hyun used a fake name, he can't find any trace of him. The reason he's here goes back to the patriarch's mansion. While he was sleeping, the father of that angry fat man barged in through the door, yelling. Seeing the vassal asleep, the man starts hitting him and says he'll make him sleep forever. That's why the vassal ended up here in the village, searching for Hyun. After a while, he finds the fat man's horse and desperately asks a boy where its owner went. Once he hears Hyun headed to Pagoda Mountain where bandits live, he starts crying even harder, just imagining his master getting beaten by criminals. He runs off in panic. Elsewhere, in the freezing forest as rain pours down, the villagers who survived are hurrying toward the nearest village. Someone waits hidden nearby. It's the guide who brought Hyun here, now showing them the way out. The woman thanks him for helping them. The old man asks if she's seen a young man wrapped in bandages. He means her savior, and she knows he stayed behind to face the mountain bandits alone. Near the waterfall, the bandits are furious because they still can't find the loose-skinned man. Then one of them points at the falls. A man walks out of the water saying he almost drowned. The bandits can't understand how he came out of the middle of the waterfall, but the man says they saved him the trouble. He was about to come find them anyway. None of them know who this man is now. Brushing his hair aside, he asks if they weren't looking for him. Still, they stare blankly. Hyun's appearance has changed so much that they don't recognize him at all. You can barely call him the loose-skinned man anymore. Cold and calm, Hyun tells them to hand over their clothes. When they refuse, he drives a kick straight into one man's head. The hit drops him in one shot, and he didn't even use mana. The rest freeze, shaking in fear, while Hyun complains that his new clothes are already dirty, so now he needs more. He says it while staring at the men who know they're about to lose theirs. Soon they're left standing in their underwear, trembling from the cold. Hyun grips his new weapon, then decides to test it. The shivering bandits don't even notice what's coming. In an instant, one head comes off cleanly. Hyun laughs and asks if they're really just going to stand there and wait to die. They immediately beg for mercy, but Hyun refuses. He already promised to take all their heads. They run in terror, but it's too late. The hunt begins. That day, everyone under the mountain is wiped out. No one escapes Hyun. Afterward, he notices his clothes are dirty again, so he heads to the riverbank to wash up. Then he sees his reflection in the water, and is stunned. The loose-skinned man is gone. Now he looks unbelievably handsome. He quickly realizes it was the virgin ginseng that changed him so much. He's both happy and embarrassed by his new face. Now he looks just as beautiful as his sister. But screams suddenly interrupt him. They are coming from the top of the mountain. There, the old guide is being tortured by bandits. The survivors have been captured again. The guide refuses to tell them anything about the loose-skinned man, and they're about to whip him again. Then, one bandit notices something, and asks why a man is just standing in the snow, watching them. Hyun crouches and makes a strange motion. The bandits wonder if he's really scooping up snow with his hand. Maybe he wants to play, but the snowball he throws hits like a bomb. Several bandits drop at once, taken out by nothing but snowballs. Anyone still trying to resist gets cut down at blinding speed. The bandits can barely follow him as he rushes up, then tears through them on the way down. Whoever survives that first attack is finished off by the Moon Destroyer strike. Only one man is left alive. Hyun asks if he's scared of him, but no one here even knows who he is anymore. The old guide coughs in pain, and remembering the man's kindness in leading him through the mountain, Hyun burns with rage. He asks if this man did it, and the survivor quickly lies. Hyun answers with one spear swing and splits him in half. The survivors beg Hyun to spare them, but he didn't come for them. He came to save the man who helped him. The guide finally realizes who stands before him. Hyun tells them to return to the village. Seeing the guide can't even speak, Hyun sends spiritual energy into his body and burns the wound shut. It's rough treatment, but it's all he can do right now. He asks if anyone can carry the guide, then orders them to head for the village and not look back. They obey at once. Hyun then swears to bring heaven's punishment down on the mountain bandits. At the gate of the bandit village, the guards are wondering why thunder is rumbling on a clear winter day. A second later, one of them is beheaded so fast he doesn't even realize he's dead. The other dies in the same strike. Hyman draws in a deep breath and roars for the bald leader to come out and fight. He plans to show no mercy to these beasts. Anything in his way will be cut down. He tears through the bandits like they're nothing, dropping several at once with ease. Today, Hyman means to erase this whole clan. Anyone watching can only shake in fear, because they know they're next. Then an arrow nearly hits Hyman. The bald leader's group has arrived. This is exactly what Hyman wanted. Now he has to fight with even more skill than before. The timing is perfect. A familiar voice rings out. The wild vassal has arrived with men to crush the bandit camp. The guards charge the bandits, and the vassal fights well too. He really can handle himself. The bald leader calls for his men to stand and fight, but he himself chooses to run. Hyman has no intention of letting that worm escape. The bald man can't believe his pursuer is still after him, and he still doesn't recognize Hyman's new face. Then he sees that raised middle finger, and suddenly remembers everything. His fear only gets worse. He's horrified. How could someone become this strong in one night? Now he understands Hyman's overwhelming power. He drops to his knees and begs for mercy. He offers women food, even gold. But Hyun asks if the bandits gave mercy to anyone else. Today he's punishing him in heaven's name. Then Hyun does what he came here to do. Just then, the vassal arrives and asks if he's alright, but he doesn't realize the man in front of him is his young master. Instead, he asks where Hyun is. Then he starts rambling about how foolish the family is, calling the young master rude like his father, ugly, bad-tempered, and saying he used to eat like an ox. Hyun briefly considers killing his own vassal. But once the vassal learns this really is his young master, his tune changes fast. Suddenly, Hyun is incredibly handsome, and they need to hurry back before the patriarch kills him. But Hyun still had unfinished business with the Chaos Servant, so the vassal pulled out the divine whip he used back when he was an inspector. Hyun had no plan to go along with this, so he tried to bolt. Instead, the butler caught him with the whip and dragged him back. On the way, Hyun swung at the vassal, who blocked it. Everyone was shocked. After only a few months, The young master had become so strong that he could pressure a former inspector. One blow against the man's guard shoved him back several steps. But then Hyun got caught off guard by an attack from behind. The vassals had to follow the patriarch's order. The fight was about to hit its peak, and everyone was dead serious. Right then, the old guide showed up. He thanked Hyun for saving them and said the prisoners got away safely. This time, they were deeply grateful. Hyun had saved a lot of people. While he was distracted saying goodbye, the vassal quietly tied him up and hauled him away, as Hyun yelled the whole time. Then the vassal knocked him out to carry him more easily. He also asked everyone to keep quiet about what Hyun had done. Since Hyun used a fake name, they should leave it that way. A nail that sticks out gets hammered down and too much attention would only bring trouble. Sometime later, back in the cave, the ginseng virgin was gone. The chaos servant came searching for it and got so furious over the theft that he nearly killed his own men. He ordered them to find the thief at once and wipe out that person's entire family. The item was gone and now he was raging, finders keepers, losers weepers. When Hyun finally woke up, he realized he'd missed his chance to track down the chaos servant in the ginseng cave. Still, when the second creature, the Millennium Snail, shows up, he'll get another shot. Not long after, they arrived in the city of Heifei. It was huge and lively, and the trading here was nothing like in his hometown. There were even places built for visitors. Once Hyun stepped out of the carriage, he found himself at the Emperor's gate. The guards stopped him as he tried to enter, but then someone told them to lower their weapons. It was his father, who had been waiting there. Seeing how worried the old man looked, Hyun tried to return that affection only to get ignored because his father didn't recognize him. Instead, his father started beating the vassal for daring to lie in the letter, because Hyun was supposed to be with him. Only after getting hit did the man finally blurt out that the handsome guy beside him was his beloved son. His father glanced at Hyun, then went right back to beating the vassal. There was no way that good-looking young man could be his son, so Hyun called him father. The old man froze at the voice and asked if he really was his dear son. He still couldn't believe his eyes. News of this quickly reached Namgung Castle. The squadron captain reported that the public had been told the old man's vassal solved the whole mess. But the truth was that Hyun alone had wiped out the entire clan. That left old Namgung impressed and curious, though he still asked if the captain might have seen wrong. The captain added that bringing Hyun back took everyone working together to hold the boy down. Then the family patriarch stepped in, saying his son was just being stubborn. Hyun was the future heir of a great clan, born with martial talent, and on top of that he had slimmed down into a handsome young man. In short, his son was ignoring the truth and trusting gossip instead. That was why he doubted it. The patriarch then declared that he would personally handle Hyun's marriage from now on. Soon after, the patriarchs met with Sinian at the center. Since he was the one being discussed, Hyun's father said the boy should take the martial arts exams, but Patriarch Namgung cut in, saying that kind of path, no matter how gifted Hyun was, would only make him a general. Hyun's father asked what he had in mind instead. The old man said that under the right master, Hyun could rise above a general and become a leader who saves the nation and leaves his name in history. The word "save the country" lit a fire in Hyun. His father, stunned, asked if a master that great really existed. Namgung said they wouldn't need to search for one. He planned to teach the boy himself. The retired patriarch of the Namgung clan, the King's Sword, Namgung Changshin. Hyun quickly figured out the old man wanted him because of what he'd accomplished. He also knew this clan was very materialistic, even if it was powerful and respected. Still, Hyun saw this as a huge chance to grow stronger and spend some time away from the Yu clan. That was, of course, if his father agreed. A moment later, his father was already sniffling after hearing Hyun wanted to become Namgung's disciple. But the Namgung elder had clearly already worked his way into the old man's head, so things settled down fast. Hyun's father said he was relieved to hear Namgung himself would look after his son, especially since he now had to go to the emperor. Confused, Namgung asked what the emperor wanted. Maybe he was thinking of choosing the next ruler and wanted his grandfather close by. Namgung immediately buttered him up, saying that only proved how trustworthy he was, and the old man soaked it up like a fool. Hyun, meanwhile, was already tired of this old man talk. Later, they were back at the emperor's gate to say goodbye. His tearful father told him to listen to his uncle and train hard. Then came the usual overprotective stuff, eat every meal, write twice a week, and so on. At last, they started to leave, and Hyun felt relieved that the awkward scene was finally ending. That relief didn't last long, though. Before going, his father and the vassal gave him one last dramatic wave in the most embarrassing way possible. Hyun was completely mortified, though he was clearly happy to be cared for like this. Then his uncle called out, and Hyun turned at once. The Namgung patriarch simply told him to follow. Hyun figured the real training was about to begin. They walked through the city, greeting people along the way. It didn't take long for Hyun to notice how popular the patriarch was. Everywhere they went, people bowed and greeted him with deep respect. Still, what impressed Hyun most was the sheer scale of the Namgung clan's city. Guards stood watch everywhere, but the moment they saw their leader, they stepped aside. Namgung led him upward. Soon they were heading to the top of the castle wall. Hyun was amazed by the view. Then the old man suddenly began to float. Hyun realized the Sword King was using aerial steps, something even his own master couldn't do. After a while, the old man landed on top of a wooden structure and turned around, telling Hyun to come up too. Hyun could have used the beggar sex movement art to get there just as easily, but he quickly guessed the Sword King wouldn't like that. He'd probably blow up and ask why Hyun was mixed up with those beggar sect bastards, so he chose another method. Hyun leaped up toward the patriarch and landed right in front of him. The old man praised his speed, and Hyun felt honored. Then, out of nowhere, the old man asked if he'd noticed the streets on the way here, and how many places he thought they had passed. Hyun shivered, realizing this might have been a test the whole time. But the patriarch answered for him. It was 64 places, while Hyun apologized for not paying attention. Instead of getting angry, the old man said every one of those places belonged to the Namgung clan. Not sure he heard right, Hyun asked him to repeat it. The patriarch pointed toward a pavilion near the mountain entrance and asked if Hyun could see it. He said yes. Then the old man explained that everything from that pavilion to the far side was Namgung land. He asked if all those lands and buildings weren't enormous. Still confused, Hyun just answered that yes, it was huge. Then the old man turned and asked what he thought of it all. Hyun was lost. The man kept asking questions and answering them himself. He even started thinking this trip up here was just a test of his movement skill. As Hyun got ready to move, the old man asked if he understood now, after seeing all these possessions. But Hyun was still preparing to dash off. The moment he stepped forward, the patriarch said he still didn't get it, even after seeing all this. Only then did Hyun remember the word possessions, and slam his head to the ground in sudden realization. Lifting his bruised face, he asked the patriarch to explain it more clearly. With a very fake-looking smirk, the old man said a good chunk of all this could become Hyun's. That completely shocked him. Then came the real point. He only had to marry the old man's granddaughter, Heir, who would come with a very generous dowry. After all that build-up, Hyun finally understood why he'd been brought here, and yes, that was exactly the reason. The old man confirmed it. Now it all made sense why the Sword King had gone through so much trouble with his father just to bring him in. Still smiling, the old man said he'd convince Heir, so Hyun didn't need to worry. Thinking the whole thing was insane, Heir simply jumped off the roof. If the Sword King was seriously talking marriage already, he had to be crazy. The old man chased after him at once, yelling for the rascal to wait. Hyun acted like he didn't hear and kept going. Behind him, the old man followed with a terrifying look, saying he could offer even more if Hyun wanted. That's when Hyun realized he'd been reborn as a martial arts prodigy, which should have been great. But the Sword King had his eyes on him, and that ruined everything. Then the old man suddenly stopped and shouted that if Hyun married his granddaughter, most of the Namgung clan's wealth could be his. Hyun flatly refused. Offended, the old man demanded a reason, so Hyun reminded him he's the only son of the Yu clan. Most of Anping belongs to the Yu family, and the emperor favors his father enough to send gifts all the time. Why would he marry for money? He even let out a tired sigh, then told his poor uncle again that he's the clan's only heir, so this marriage talk needs to end. Hyun had gotten excited because he thought he'd be learning martial arts, and only then did the old man realize wealth means nothing to a kid raised with everything. Still, as the one man who broke past every limit and became the Sword King, he had to have something else to offer. A little later, the old man started showing off with a flurry of sword moves. Hyun just wondered why he'd been dragged out for this so early in the morning. Namgung finished and proudly declared it the emperor's sword style, asking if it wasn't amazing. Hyun only thought old people probably just wake up too early. Then the old man threw his sword and called it the explosive vibrant blade. The blade sliced into the tree over and over from different angles, and Hyun's first thought was whether those trees were expensive. The old man kept parading one technique after another for quite a while. Finally breathing hard, he said these arts are taught only to direct Namgung descendants. He was just about to add that marrying his granddaughter would let Hyun learn them all, but Hyun was already walking away. Panicking, the old man threw himself at him and insisted he pay attention. These were priceless techniques no amount of money could buy. Hyun said he already knew that, but everything shown so far was nothing special. The old man burst out laughing. Sure, it had to be a joke. Then he said Hyun was talented, sure, but he'd only just started martial arts, so there was no way he could grasp how great these techniques were. He started explaining that martial arts are built up and refined over generations, when Hyun cut him off and said he could do that easily. Stunned, the old man told him to stop talking nonsense. Hyun calmly asked if he should prove it. Picking up a branch, he figured this was probably the only way to make the old man back off. Rumors were going to spread anyway, so pretending to be a genius one more time couldn't hurt. He began swinging the branch while his uncle kept telling him to quit joking. Then Hyun slid the branch into an invisible sheath. After a brief pause to focus, he started his demonstration. The old man froze in confusion. Hyun was actually using the emperor's sword style, and he was doing it beautifully with nothing but a branch. The old man couldn't believe his eyes. He immediately yelled for Hyun to stop. Angry and shaken, he demanded to know what was going on and how Hyun had learned the emperor's sword style. Without a hint of fear, Hyun answered that the old man himself taught him. Still baffled, he asked if Hyun meant that seriously. Hyun replied that he'd just seen it demonstrated a moment ago. That's when the old man understood, calling someone a genius didn't even begin to cover what this boy was. While he stood there thinking Hyun copied it after seeing it once, Hyun called out to him. He asked if the old man always stood around staring and drooling like this. Then Hyun tossed the branch aside and said he definitely wasn't marrying his granddaughter. The old man only muttered, "Okay," while watching the branch drop, but inside, his eyes were burning. This boy was perfect, and he'd make him marry her no matter what. Elsewhere in Namgung City, 3 men were moving through the streets. They walked quietly among the townspeople, until one of them ordered the others to split up here. As he did, he recalled what he'd learned after paying a citizen for information. The man said a client had arrived 2 days ago, then immediately gathered people familiar with Huangshan and started asking about the Crimson Pebble. That person's name was Jin Weigong, and of course the informant was killed. After that, we returned to the protagonist's quarters, where someone was shouting for his uncle right in front of him. Hyun opened the door to meet the caller. It was his former master, now his nephew, asking why he wasn't training. Hyun casually answered that he didn't need to learn the Namgung clan's cultivation art. That instantly made the boy angry, and he ordered him to come at once. Hyun only thought that in his past life, that glare would have terrified him, but now it looked almost cute. The boy was furious. He hated this situation, especially after learning Hyun was so gifted he could copy a technique after seeing it once. Still, he knew talent in only external arts. Without inner training would make for a terrible fighter. And even now, he couldn't sense a single trace of internal energy from Hyun, so he grabbed Hyun by the shoulder and firmly told him again to come with him. Hyun just thought this fool was digging his own grave. Turning with a wicked look, he decided it was finally time to start training his disciple. He pushed the boy's hand off his shoulder and said he'd heard his nephew plan to teach him, but there was nothing to learn from him. If anything, Hyun should be the one teaching his useless nephew. The boy snapped that he'd been polite enough to call him uncle, yet he still dared to act this arrogant. Hyun only asked what kind of face he was making. Was he going to hit his uncle just to force him along? Then he told him to try it if he could, calling him nephew again, and that only made the boy madder. With a dark aura rising from him, Hyun asked what was wrong with calling his nephew that. Then, wearing a crazy grin, he mocked him by repeating nephew. The boy shouted that he was completely insane and arrogant beyond belief. Honestly, arrogant was too weak for how angry he was. He should have been cursing far worse. The provocation clearly worked. He looked ready to explode but still didn't swear. Hyun pointed out how casual he sounded when all he could say was arrogant, then mocked him for only knowing one insult. In his past life, this man used a different curse every day, so Hyun remembered him as someone who swore constantly when he was young. Back then, he was unmatched with the sword, and people even called him the Sword King of 7 emotions. He had pushed every human emotion to its limit through martial arts. He'd hit someone because he woke up in a bad mood or because he felt great after a meal. Because of all those moods, Hyun had suffered through plenty in the past, so none of this made sense. How could this guy be so polite now when, in the other timeline, he'd reached the peak of emotional madness? If that changed, one of Morim's heroes might never exist, and Hyun couldn't allow that. At first, he only meant to help with martial arts, but now he'd have to fix the boy's personality too. He called it a pain, though the wicked smile on his face said otherwise. His nephew, now calling his uncle a scoundrel, demanded to know what he was even talking about. When Hyun suddenly appeared in front of him and said he'd understand after getting beaten up, the man was startled, wondering if that was heavenly wind skating. Taking his stance, he declared a cheap copy had no chance. Then he rushed in, saying he'd show him the gap between the real thing and a fake. His attacks were genuinely fierce. Even Hyun was impressed as he slipped past the blows. Still, attacks like that weren't going to touch him. The man struck again, and Hyun leaped in an odd way. By instinct, the boy quickly brought up his guard, but a kick easily knocked him off balance. He blocked it, yet the force still sent him flying several meters. As the boy gasped for breath, Hyun asked if all he planned to do was block. Then Hyun charged again at blinding speed. Expecting a punch, the boy tried to block, but the strike never landed there. For a split second, he thought about dodging with internal energy, but Hyun, smiling coldly, told him that wouldn't work. A punch wrapped in blue aura was already waiting. The boy realized too late and tried to take the hit with internal energy, but he quickly found he couldn't stop it and stumbled. Hyun used the opening, drove his fist down, and tore through his defense. The hit landed cleanly, and he'd even used a Namgung clan technique. With explosive illumination, he smashed his nephew right in the face, and even laughed while doing it. The poor boy flew backward and crashed into a wall. Hyun went after him again while he was already weakened. The boy was completely overwhelmed, coughing up blood, shocked. He asked how Hyun could use explosive illumination when he seemed to have no internal energy. Had he really learned it just from their brief contact? If so, he truly was a heaven-sent genius. There was nothing he could do against this monster standing before him. Hyun simply said his nephew still had a lot to learn. The poor guy could only feel fear. The sounds of impact kept ringing out. Hyun was beating him down, saying he had no idea how long he'd waited for this. And as he spoke, he kept kicking and smashing his face without the slightest mercy. After all, this was exactly what he had suffered under this man in his past life. He had waited eagerly for this day, and now that it had finally come, he was thrilled. Still cursing. The boy could only beg him to stop because it hurt too much. Then something clicked, and he remembered words from his past. What he was feeling right now was anger. As tears ran down his face, he yelled for Hyun to quit the nonsense, and then another brutal hook smashed into him. Seeing his nephew was still far too weak, Hyun started thinking about how to make him stronger. He even considered chasing that second mystical creature. Sometime later, he pointed at the boy and said they would train together from now on. That was the start of the poor kid's nightmare. A few days later, back at the Namgung family palace, their harsh training was still going on. They kept at it for 10 straight days, and through that hellish routine, the boy finally started to respond. Letting his feelings out, he swung his sword. Hien could tell the attack already carried a solid amount of internal energy. In just a few days, he had mixed his anger into the blade. That made Hien realize something. This boy grows fastest when he's pushed to his limit. For now, learning to merge anger into his power was enough. Next would come training to draw that anger out. Thinking that Hien hit him and sent him flying. He rushed in right away for another punch, but his nephew's face suddenly changed. His eyes filled with rage. That was exactly what Hien wanted. The nephew answered with a huge strike wrapped in angry aura. The moment he realized he missed, panic hit him. If Hien attacked now, he'd probably be out cold for 3 days. But out of nowhere, Hien said they were done for today and had somewhere to go. His nephew could only ask where. With a scary look, Hien asked if he was questioning him. Knowing another beating might come, the boy jumped up and said they should leave right away. Even though he had no idea where they were headed, he was finally learning. In another part of the Namgung clan's city, people were going about their day when someone stopped by a beggar and dropped a coin into his bowl. After the beggar thanked him, the man asked to speak with him in return. He was actually one of their men, reporting that their leader Jin Weigong was not in the Namgung clan. The beggar stayed quiet for a second, then looked up and asked if he was sure. The disguised man said yes, but added that someone strange had shown up around the same time. At once the leader asked who it was and heard the name Yu Qian, Yu Seongwan's son, now staying with the Namgung clan. The man asked if they should get the captain involved. After a brief thought, the beggar spotted Hien and his nephew passing nearby just then. He decided they would not call the captain. They would investigate on their own. At once, one of his men began tailing Hien and the boy. The messenger stood up, and the beggar thanked him again for the coin. But his real order was to move ahead with the plan. Still, someone else had been watching too. These two men were after the beggar for earning money in their turf without paying. In short, they were mad and wanted to beat him up. Sometime later, the nephew complained that all the books were full of sad stories and miserable people. So why did they need to carry so many of them? Hien said he needed experience, and no one had ever gotten sick from this. Since the protagonist also grew up rich, he really couldn't argue. Now Hien had him read a Beijing opera and laugh loudly, which left the boy confused. But after a while, he got really into it. Hien explained that happiness calms the heart and keeps sadness and anger from taking over. If his nephew's heart settled down, he could see more clearly and understand his enemies better. The boy said he'd remember that, then asked again what they were supposed to do with all those gloomy books. Just then it cuts back to the fake beggar group. By now they had already picked their targets. The order was simple: follow quietly and only observe. Their leader said he would personally track Yu Kanao, and everyone else had to stay careful and avoid being noticed until they left Hefei. Then someone suddenly shouted for the beggar. Hyun and his nephew turned at once to see what was happening. The same guy from earlier was accusing the beggar of roaming around without paying taxes. That instantly ruined their plan. When the beggar asked who they were, the men mocked him for being bold. Their leader introduced himself as Wang Tiu of Hefei's Juhua sect. Acting scared, the beggar begged for mercy, but Wang Tiu told his men to beat him. The fake beggar leader knew he couldn't reveal who he was or the whole plan would fall apart. With Yu Kanao right there, he wondered if he should just take the beating. Watching it happen, the nephew asked if they should step in. Yu Kan said he didn't understand because he had been sheltered growing up. The world wasn't a fairy tale and they couldn't interfere in everything. Street fights between the beggar sect and the vagabond sect happened all the time. These men were from the Juhua sect, enemies of the beggar sect, and since this wasn't a fight between martial artists, that was one more reason to stay out of it. So they turned away and kept walking, while the villains secretly signaled that the pair had left and they could move in. Then a purple aura burst from the alley as they ordered everyone to stop. The vagabond leader had no idea what was happening before he was blasted away from the beggar. One of the men shouted for the boy, but by then they were already surrounded by the villains. Their leader ordered everyone to stay back. After scrambling up, the man told his gang to seize the beggar. But under that crushing aura, none of them could move right. The beggar walked up to his attacker and asked if he understood what he had just done. This had been a rare chance, maybe one they'd never get again, and failure was not allowed, so the vagabond boy would pay the price. He grabbed the boy by the head and did exactly what you'd expect. After that, he said there was a river nearby and told his men to dump the rest and erase every trace. They obeyed at once. That night, several vagabond clan members vanished, just for beating a beggar. Not far away, someone was hiding in the bushes. He was one of Wang's men, and he had just learned these people were no ordinary vagabonds. That beggar wasn't from the beggar sect either. Crying as he ran, he said he had to report this to the beggar sect. Back at the Namgung pavilion, the family patriarch was furious, demanding to know why she still hadn't come. He had called for his granddaughter to come marry, but she refused because she simply didn't want to. Worse, she had already gone to the battlefield to fight the unorthodox sects and made sure her letter arrived only after she had left. That only made the patriarch angrier. In a burst of rage, he complained about how these young people were being raised. Since she clearly wasn't coming back, he decided to send Hyun to her instead. Happy with that idea, he went off to find the protagonist. Then he suddenly heard loud swearing. He instantly thought intruders had gotten inside, so he jumped the wall to check. But what he found surprised him. Hyun was swinging swords at his nephew, while the boy cursed non-stop and cried through his attack. Then a golden aura rose from his sword. The old man thought it looked like a controlled flame, while the protagonist noticed him. Before the strike could land, he ordered them to stop. The young man halted at once, and Hu Sung got mad, saying this time he could have hit his head. Hearing Sung swear like that seemed to impress the old man, while the protagonist asked what he was doing there. Dropping down from the roof, the old man said the training had caught his interest, and Hyun told him he could watch. That made the old man wonder if this was even still his own house. He asked if Hyun was teaching Sung swordsmanship, but Hyun denied it and said they were only training. That made the young patriarch wonder why he was lying. The old man pointed out that the boy had used a technique unlike the clan's, and Hyun said he created it himself. That startled the young man, who asked what his uncle meant. Hyun then explained it was the Sword of Seven Emotions, a technique built around a person's feelings. The old man studied that idea with interest, and realized the clan, long built on speed and variation, was entering a new era. When the protagonist asked why he had come, the old man said he needed him to go to the Moram Alliance. But before he could explain more, a man interrupted to report that someone from the Hefe Beggars sect had arrived, and that something terrible seemed to have happened. The old man told the protagonist they'd speak later, while Soon decided he should go see for himself. Left behind, he thought those two really were alike, and since he had nothing better to do, he might as well take a walk through the city. As he moved along, some people watched him. One of them quietly asked their leader what to do. The man dressed as a beggar thought they might not get another chance like this, so he ordered everyone to go after him. His men agreed, and planned to grab him once he reached a quieter spot. The city was crowded, and the protagonist was glad he could finally look around in peace. Things had been rough before because people from Vamping recognized him. Still, remembering those smiling faces and the gifts they gave him made him miss them. The former fatty wondered if everyone was doing well, and knew that if he wanted to return to Vamping Prefecture and keep peace in times like this, he would have to act before chaos could spread. Then he noticed someone passing by who looked a little familiar. He figured he must have seen the man somewhere in the streets before, so he let it go. But right then, he picks up on something shady and keeps his focus while finishing a dumpling. From a distance, a man is clearly watching him. Time passes, and he keeps moving through the city. That same man keeps tailing him. Before long, he passes an old beggar and realizes it's the vagabond who got beaten yesterday. That annoys him. Did the guy really think plain clothes would hide him? He remembers hearing that something terrible happened to the beggar sect and figures these people are probably behind it. So he calls over a man pretending to read a book, casually asking what he's doing there. That sudden move rattles the people following him, and the man gets smashed right in the groin. In the confusion, the protagonist slips away. The others rush after him so he can't escape. But when they reach the alley he entered, he's already gone. The long-haired man wonders if he even came this way. Then the protagonist speaks from a rooftop, asking who they are and why so many men are chasing him. He figures they must really want something from him. The old man glares at him, clearly irritated. The protagonist drops down from above and coldly asks why they're swarming him like rats. Then he asks if they're the same people who chased him last night. One look at their faces tells him he's right. He wonders if they're leftovers from the Nine Dragons Fortress or if they're after the Virgin Ginseng. The old man tells his men killing him would be easy, but the boy is tied to a former government official, so this could turn messy if the government gets involved. He asks straight out if he is Jin Wei Gang, the one who took the Virgin Ginseng. The protagonist plays dumb and asks who that is. That makes the narrow-eyed old man wonder if they've got the wrong person. If he really ate the Virgin Ginseng, he should at least be at the energy condensation stage, but he feels no internal energy at all. Still, our former fat guy learned too well from that beggar how to hide himself, so he knows they won't figure him out. At the same time, he realizes that if they came this far for the Virgin Ginseng, they're definitely connected to the Servants of Chaos, so he decides not to waste time. He'll capture them and force out whatever they know. The narrow-eyed elder apologizes and calls it a misunderstanding, but the protagonist stops him, saying they don't get to leave before telling him who they are. The old man drops the act and orders his men to attack. The senior fighters charge in. Seeing them rush him without using deadly techniques just makes him want to beat them even more. With one hit each, he drops two men and sends them flying into a wall. He tells the old man they must have thought he was weak if they attacked without even using skills. The narrow-eyed man gets nervous. A person with no visible internal energy just did that. The protagonist brushes the two aside and asks if the old man plans to run next. That only makes the old man angrier. Our former chubby hero knows he's outnumbered, so he puts on an act and asks if they want to play. He grabs one of the men he already knocked down and bolts out of there. The long-haired old man chases after him and attacks from behind. But the protagonist easily ducks it and quickly scans the area, spotting the perfect place for his plan. He tightens his muscles and hurls the captive man onto a rooftop, sending him crashing through it and making people inside panic and run. Then he leaps high into the air and readies a kick. A single blow tears the building apart. The senior fighters move toward the wreckage, and he says they've arrived sooner than expected. Touching his face, he wonders if the old man already knew. The old man then freezes in fear. The man in front of him is someone he recognizes. Now showing his changed appearance, the protagonist says the fool followed him right into the center of Hefe. He even asks if they want to keep playing, because now they'll have to deal with him and the two clans protecting the city. Realizing the trap, the man curses him for being smarter than he expected. He knows fighting two clans too will be impossible, so they need to get out of Hefe fast. But before that, he orders the senior men to kill the protagonist. The protagonist immediately understands they want to silence him. He lifts his leg, shattering stone and kicking chunks of rock into the air. Then he asks if they really thought he had no tricks left. He snatches the flying stones and thinks they should have run when they had the chance. Using the 12 consecutive cuts technique, he strikes all of them at once. But at that moment, one man lunges at him from behind. Our hero praises him for tailing him this far, but says a real martial artist isn't getting caught by something that simple. As he's being choked, the man swallows a pill, which makes the protagonist realize something is wrong when the man suddenly dies. Then he understands the old man's real goal. He turns to find him, but he's too late. The old man has already killed the captured comrade. A loud disturbance breaks out, and he sees the others killing their own allies too. They're wiping out their subordinates so no evidence remains. The old man orders a retreat, and the three elders flee at once. Our hero says if that's how they want to play, he won't hold back either, and tears after them. The chase tears through the city. One of them realizes he won't escape, so he stops and turns to face him. The protagonist slips past the sword strike with one motion and kills the man in a single hit, not caring whether these people live or die. The old man quickly tells his subordinate something, and the man agrees. At the next turn, they split up. That makes the protagonist worry he might lose one of them. But then the old man looks up in shock. Men ahead are shouting for them to stop. They're members of the two clans guarding the city. The protagonist thinks they took their time, but at least they're here, now he can keep chasing the old man. The old man runs harder through the streets, with our hero right behind him. He knows getting caught now would ruin everything. Desperate, he pulls out a strange little ball, spins around and throws it at the protagonist. But when he looks again, the target is gone. The ball flies into empty space and explodes a moment later. Then the protagonist suddenly appears, calls out to him and punches him in the face. The hit launches him across the street until he slams into a brick wall. Cracking his fingers, the protagonist tells him to give it up. His men have already been captured. Beaten, the old man demands to know who he is and why he hid his power. But the winner gets to ask first. He asks where the narrow-eyed old man came from, then warns that if he won't talk, they've got all the time in the world to get to know each other. Struggling back up, the old man thinks about all he's already sacrificed for this plan, even his own people and himself. Before he dies, he'll kill this bastard first. Seeing that look, the protagonist knows it's the face of someone making one last desperate move. That only makes the old man angrier. He snaps, asking if this all looks like a joke. The protagonist checks around and sees none of the sect members nearby, so he decides to end it with one strike. The old man doesn't understand what he means, but braces himself. He decides to kill him quickly and shut him up. He assumes the protagonist will rush in to close the distance, and plans to take that moment to cut off his head. But the protagonist remembers the perfect martial art to show the gap between them. He settles into a calm stance and presses into the ground, drawing power through his whole body. A heavy aura rises from his feet, moves up his body, and gathers in his fist. Then a massive strike slams into the old man without the protagonist even stepping forward. The old man takes the crushing blow in stunned confusion, while the protagonist watches without a hint of doubt. The elder is blasted into the wall again, and the impact triggers a huge explosion. The protagonist asks if that was enough, then says this is Shaolin's supreme art, the 30-meter mystic fist. He was told that if he mastered it, he could unleash thousands of punches. Looking at the old man sprawled on the ground, he wonders what to do now since he can't question him here. Then luckily, a man appears and introduces himself as the leader of the beggar sect, asking to take the prisoner. The protagonist agrees and walks over with them to the unconscious man. The two beggars inspect his body and tell their leader it's exactly as beyond described. The elder of the beggar sect asks to leave this man to them, leaving the protagonist confused and wondering what that sneaky thief is talking about. Someone suddenly comes running over, yelling for his uncle. It's the young master, and the first thing he asks is what happened to the protagonist's clothes. They're soaked and covered in dirt. The boy, who's become loyal in just 10 days, instantly gets mad and demands to know who did it. Our hero smacks him and tells him to shut up. Stunned, the young master asks why he got hit, and the protagonist raises his hand again, annoyed that he's trying to avoid it. The beggar clan elder studies the man on the ground and realizes he was no weakling. His allies were at the manifested energy level, maybe even projected energy. Even so, that young man beat all of them by himself. The old man apologizes for being rude, and the protagonist notes that the beggar sect was already hunting this man. The elder explains that the Gua sect, tied to the beggar sect, was wiped out by people like him. Then he asks how our hero is connected to them, and the young man realizes he's being tested for information. So he says those thieves were chasing someone else, and simply mistook him for that person. Remembering all the harsh training and beatings he went through, the protagonist has no plans to get fooled by this old man. Even then, the bearded elder still suspects he's hiding something. Still, he thinks their appearance here might help. If needed, he can even trace things back to the Namgum clan. Right now, though, our hero can't do much because he lacks power. These enemies stay hidden and move in secret, so no one knows what they'll do once they learn their pursuit team was wiped out. If that happens, the whole Yu clan could be destroyed. That means he has to draw their attention somewhere else. And these beggars are perfect for that. They love digging up secrets. Once they start moving, he'll gain time. All he has to do is point them the right way. So the protagonist pretends to remember the group's name, and the bearded man gets excited, already asking him to reveal it. But our hero refuses. He nearly died in that fight, and he still isn't sure he can trust the beggar leader. Then he throws his disciple a look, asking for help without words. Faced with that scary expression, the young man can only wonder what he did wrong. Then he starts thinking hard, trying to use all that study in statecraft and math. He steps in, tells the beggar to stop, and says he's putting his uncle in a tough spot. That only annoys the protagonist, since the boy just wrecked his whole plan. Even so, the beggar apologizes and says this is about the sect's honor, so he wants custody of the man. Before his disciple can say anything else, the protagonist agrees. There's really no better option. But anything connected to him must be left out, and if they learn something, they have to share it. The bearded man promises they will. Our hero says goodbye with a sly smile, while the beggars watch him leave. The long-haired man feels like he got played since he didn't even collect an information fee. But his leader scolds him and brings up the phrase about the ruin of the heavens, meaning these people may want to destroy the heavens. In other words, they could be planning to overturn the whole Mirim world. If they question this man and uncover that plot, it could be enough to make him an elder of the main sect, so he orders them to take the prisoner and head back to the sect. A few hours later, night falls. The protagonist thinks the servant was supposed to find clues about the second mystical creature, but the story has changed. What matters now is being far more careful. Since they failed to get the virgin ginseng, he's sure they'll move faster toward the second mystical creature. So he needs to act carefully and fast to stop everything from falling into chaos. Back at the sect, a loud shout rings out. It's the old man, asking if the protagonist really plans to go to the Orthodox Murim Alliance. He asks again if he's serious. The answer is yes. Our hero wants more experience. The old man quickly agrees and tells him to befriend Rai. On top of that, he wants Sung to go too. That leaves the young master totally shocked. But the old man says that would be hard, since Sung is the young patriarch. The protagonist understands at once. As young patriarch, he has duties and can't just leave. So our hero says he'll get ready and pack up. As Hyun heads for the door, he remembers hearing that besides Rai, there are 5 other phoenixes, and all of them are supposed to be unbelievably beautiful. So now he's excited to meet them. The old man is stunned when he realizes where this is going. Hyun keeps going, saying he might meet one and even get married. Spring is coming after all. The old man immediately shouts that they need a clan meeting right away, while Hyun leaves with a bounce in his step, pleased that his plan worked. Later, the scene shifts to the Yangtze River, where a large ship is waiting. A man tells his subordinates to inspect the vessel carefully. Then a bald man walks up and pulls an envelope from his clothes. He hands it over, calling it a sign of his sincerity. That's enough for the man to tell his subordinates to make it quick, then go eat breakfast. The 3 men leave, and the bald man stays behind, politely seeing them off. In his head, though, he mocks these officials for being easy to buy. After that, he heads down into the ship and calls out, saying he told the crew to stay away from the storage cabin so the hidden guest could rest. The man in hiding says he'll pay the rest when they arrive and thanks him. The bald man goes back up, relieved, saying they only need to get past Black Whale Fortress and everything will be fine as long as they pay the toll. Then he notices our protagonist and the young patriarch boarding the ship. A few hours later, the sails go up and the vessel finally sets off. Someone warns the protagonist not to challenge the pirates, since that could cause huge losses. Even when our hero still wants to fight, the young man explains that the trouble would be far bigger than he thinks. If battle breaks out, every pirate in the fortress might come swarming in. Worse, they have a monster-level fighter, someone said to rival his grandfather. His name is Sea Dragon King Saijin, the so-called monster of the sea. He slams the table and warns that if the protagonist loses control and starts a war, the damage will be massive, so he needs to stay quiet. Our hero listens without a word and just stares at his disciple, then punches him in the head. The young man complains that solving everything with fists is awful, while the protagonist keeps thinking about this sea dragon emperor. For now, it seems he really has no choice but to stay quiet. Hours later, the ship is out on the open sea. A man at the front watches the distance until he spots something strange and calls out, "It's a Black Whale Fortress ship." A vessel with black flags moves toward them. The whole crew goes pale. Soon the ships meet, and a huge pirate boards the protagonist's vessel. The bald captain greets him, saying it's been a while. Vice leader Goldjack and instantly tells a subordinate to bring the toll money. The pirate praises him for handling things without needing every detail explained. Watching this, someone thinks the exchange seems smooth enough, but it feels odd that the pirates still haven't left. The fat man says the money settles one matter, but there's another. He was ordered to search for someone on this ship. Then he turns to the bald captain and asks if anyone else is being hidden aboard. He clearly knows this man sometimes sneaks criminals onto his boat. If he just hands the person over, the other passengers won't need to be bothered. The captain may love money, but he wants to stay alive more, so he admits someone is hidden in the storage cabin. The fat pirate shouts that they're searching for a fugitive, and orders everyone to line up and cooperate. The passengers are so terrified they can only stand there shaking. One pirate notices the protagonist calmly gazing out at the sea. That cool attitude annoys him, so he smacks the young man on the head and demands to know if he heard the order to line up. Sung gives the protagonist a desperate look, begging him not to do anything reckless, but our hero is already glaring at the pirate with burning anger. Then a scream suddenly erupts from the cargo hold, and everyone turns that way. Even the pirate looks confused when he hears footsteps, and the hidden man steps out on his own in elegant black robes. The fat pirate demands to know how he dared touch his men, while the long-haired man says hiding from the beggar sect is hard enough. He didn't expect them to trust common pirates to catch him. That enrages the fat man, who draws his sword and says he'll take the man's head. He launches a lightning-fast strike, but it only slams into a pillar. The protagonist watches and admits the pirate isn't weak, though he can't figure out why this guy keeps jumping around. Then the people below notice the damaged pillar starting to collapse and panic at the thought of being crushed. Before it can hit them, someone slices it clean in half. It's the protagonist, annoyed now that these people have shown their real faces. After saving everyone, he lands dramatically on the deck. Then he watches the chaotic fight between the fat pirate and the well-dressed man, with neither side landing a clean hit. Then he notices something strange through the tear in the well-dressed man's sleeve, a crimson snake tattoo. It instantly reminds him of his master's warning about a man in the Murim Orthodox Alliance prison with that same mark. That man's name was Huang Do-Kei-san, and he knows where the second mystical creature he desperately needs can be found. Seeing all this line up, he thinks fate is finally on his side. Before he can step in, the young patriarch yells at him to stay out of it. They had agreed he wouldn't interfere, but our hero cuts him off and orders his apprentice to protect everyone. If anyone gets hurt, it's 2 days of angry training. The moment he hears that, the young patriarch draws his sword. He has no intention of suffering through that. He watches the pirate and the well-dressed man clash, their blows sending out shockwaves strong enough to hurt the passengers. Those attack waves keep coming, and he knows he can't block every single one. Still, he finds an answer and focuses on making his sword even faster. As his mind clears, he fights back tears, thinking sorrow makes the blade sharper. With that storm of force rushing at him, he slowly swings his sword. The golden aura from his blade hits the leftover shockwaves and bends them away. With small exact movements, he shields the whole crew from the barrage. An old man thanks his rescuer, then wonders what the uncle will do next. That is when he realizes the protagonist is gone. As the fight rages on, Captain Fat Jack throws all his power into a huge sweeping strike. The mustached man dodges it with ease. He spots the opening that attack left behind and moves in with a counter meant to finish the fight. But before it lands, something drops between them at incredible speed. The protagonist knocks the pirate's arm aside and sends his sword flying. The sudden entrance shocks everyone. Then he gathers aura into his fist and lands a brutal punch that completely folds the whale-sized pirate. Fat Jack crashes to the deck, likely done for, while the well-dressed man demands to know who this guy is. Ignoring that, our former underdog asks if he's Kwang Deoxium, catching him off guard. The reaction tells him he guessed right, so he says he came to save him because he has questions to ask. Then he turns to the remaining pirates. He tells them he's busy with this man so they can leave or die here. The two pirates still standing just stare at him, confused. The MC frowns and asks if they didn't understand him. But when he looks back, the man he came to save is gone. He rushes to the edge of the ship to find him. There he sees the guy already in the sea, swimming off like a dolphin. Watching him flee, our hero can't believe the man is making this so hard when he's trying to help. Before he can move, Fat Jack orders his men to chase him. One after another, the pirates dive into the water like they're jumping into a pool. Seeing that fat fool still trying to catch the man after being told not to, the protagonist calls for his subordinate and orders him to deal with Fat Jack. The pirate on the ground panics, not even sure who he's talking to. Then comes the threat. Mess it up, and it's a full week of angry training. That makes the young patriarch shout that he'd rather die than let the fatso escape, which leaves his master very pleased. Then the protagonist jumps into the sea like everyone else. The second he hits the water, he turns into Shark Boy and tears through the waves after the well-dressed man. Fat Jack wonders why he's going this far for that guy, but before he can think more, the young patriarch closes in. He casually says his uncle must be amazing. Maybe he learned water arts while trying to lose weight. The pirate asks who he is, snapping the patriarch out of his thoughts, and reminding him he has a job to do. He moves closer, making the pirate ask if they know each other. Cracking his fist, the patriarch answers that the only thing that matters is this pirate deserves to be taken down. Enough talking. He just follows orders and places a hand on the fat man's head while the pirate trembles. A desperate scream follows as the hit lands. Back in the water, we return to the pirates chasing the well-dressed man. The protagonist has already caught up, but one pirate tries to stop him from getting any closer. He attacks, and the protagonist dodges with ease. The bandana-wearing pirate suddenly loses sight of him and wonders where he went. By the time he looks up, it's too late. The last thing he sees is the bottom of the protagonist's shoe slamming into his face. Using the pirate like a springboard, our hero says this is actually pretty fun. While the man sinks, then he looks ahead and spots something useful. The pirates are lined up almost perfectly for him, so he starts stepping off them like a bridge across the water, thinking that if Dharma crossed the Yellow River on a leaf, then he can cross the Yangtze on pirate heads. Sometime later, Captain Fat Jack says they finally understand. This is the main ship of the Black Whale Fort, and that means they might as well be dead. He doesn't get to finish, because the protagonist smashes a punch into his face. The pirate drops hard onto the deck. Our hero tells his son they've run into a problem. The patriarch says he warned him already, but the protagonist just tells them to enjoy it. Then the two head for the approaching ship. A few hours later, the sun is setting, the ship is wrecked, and pirates are floating all over the sea. A scar-faced man watches the water from afar and spots the boat the protagonist was on. On that side, the fat pirate moves forward, making the scar-faced man wonder what that idiot is doing and why he's coming this way. Then another pirate swims up, shouting for the chief. The scar-faced man asks if he has any flares. The other pirate hesitates, saying it could be dangerous if the Black Whale Fort chief learns they took this request on their own. Their leader tells him to quit whining and fire it. The Black Whale Fort's pride has been stepped on. A little scolding from the chief doesn't matter now. As the flare is raised, the pirate thinks that once it's fired, that person will come. The one everyone fears, the Water Dragon King, a monster both orthodox and unorthodox fighters avoid. Elsewhere, an old man sits at a desk, writing. Suddenly someone rushes in, shouting that a red flare was fired near the Yangtze River. The old man jumps up. We now learn he's Jagal Shambam, the great strategist of the Murim Orthodox Alliance. The report says the flare went up about 2 hours ago, and many pirates are now demanding the river gates be opened. He knows only pirates use red flares, so he wonders who forced them into doing it. He asks his subordinate if they know why it was fired, but the messenger has no answer. That makes the commander furious. 2 hours have passed, and they still don't know who caused this. If someone is strong enough to make enemies of the pirates, they should be recruited. He orders the Celestial Alliance squadron to mobilize at once and head to the Western Canal entrance to handle the protest. They can't let the pirates take the Arwan Canal, the route leading to the Murim Orthodox Alliance. When he asks where the flare was fired, he learns it was near Anhui province. That shocks him, because that's where the Black Whale Fortress is. He immediately demands to know where the Water Dragon King is. He's told the latest reports place him somewhere near Jagal Prefecture. Since that area is close to where the flare was seen, he likely noticed it already. Hearing that, the elder quickly asks where the highest-ranking member, the little beggar dragon who came for the entrance test, is. Elsewhere, late at night, someone grumbles about being bothered at this hour. He's already been told about the red flare, but still asks why anyone woke him up for that. This man is the little beggar dragon of the beggar sect. He immediately tries to wake his sleeping friend. The man only grunts and swats his hand away, making him complain that the hairy guy reeks of alcohol and needs to stop drinking so much. Annoyed that his friend still won't wake up, he shouts at him. The pretty boy finally opens his eyes, cursing and asking why he got dragged out of sleep in the middle of the night. The beggar dragon explains that his elder uncle has summoned him somewhere, and the hairy guy will head elsewhere tomorrow. Even then, the drunk asks what that has to do with him, which annoys the beggar dragon, since they'll be apart for a while, but the other guy just tells him to get lost. Still dizzy from drinking, he drops his head and goes right back to snoring, leaving the beggar dragon thinking he really chose his friends badly. Still, there is no time for that, so he unties the rope at his waist. He gives the rope to the messenger and tells him to find the beggars by the well and have them search the northern waters. After the messenger leaves, the hairy guy stays down for a moment, then mutters that he feels well enough to get up now, and the Water Dragon King is probably mixed up in this. So he really does care, because he doesn't want that beggar knight getting hurt. Elsewhere on the river, a man in white is being carried on a small boat. Then we cut back to the fight, the protagonist left behind. The crew stays huddled together on the cargo ship, clearly nervous. Meanwhile, the young patriarch finishes off the last pirates still attacking. After dropping one more pirate, he looks ahead and wonders what his uncle is doing. His uncle is still pounding a pirate's face with heavy punches, then knocks him flat without budging. Just then, a sound makes him realize this situation has gotten out of hand. No matter how many he beats down, more pirates keep coming. He yells at Fat Jack to keep going. They don't have time to stay here. The pirate under him agrees right away. He asks the whale if there's anywhere nearby to anchor, and gets a reluctant yes. But then someone suddenly flies over the protagonist's boat. He senses it and looks up, only to see a man dropping from the sky, leaving him thinking, what the hell is that? The man crashes onto the boat like a meteor and shouts for all to hear about the Yangtze River route. He introduces himself as Little Beggar Dragon of the Beggar Sect, and warns that the New Rim Alliance will protect everyone here, so they should back off. Watching him lecture everyone, the protagonist wonders who this guy is. Then a memory of his past and his master hits him, and he realizes the man in front of him is that same person, just younger. Suddenly, a loud order rings out for all boats to stop. The protagonist wonders if that drunk actually made it work. A man orders all Yangtze disciples to salute the chief commander, and a massive cry of respect rises from every boat. Now the protagonist understands who they're talking about, and quickly looks over. A white-haired man approaches slowly on a small boat carried by a burly servant, leaving the protagonist stunned and little beggar dragon as well. That man is the water dragon king. The protagonist quickly realizes how close they are. He tells Fat Jack to turn at once, because this is one of the biggest figures in the unorthodox sect, and they might crash into him. The whole crew strains to turn the ship. Even then, the gap is so small it still looks like a collision is coming. The protagonist sees they're about to slam right into each other, but the man stays calm and simply reaches out a hand. With one touch, he unleashes a blast that shoves the boat aside and changes its path. When both men land on the protagonist's ship, he realizes the boat was stopped by pure power alone and wonders how strong this guy really is. The Water Dragon King introduces himself and his servant, sweeping the group with a cold stare. Little Beggar Dragon quickly bows to the ruler of the river, and the young patriarch follows. He also pays his respects. Then the man beside the Water Dragon King suddenly moves and the protagonist senses danger right away. In the next instant, the big man has someone by the collar, lifting him into the air. But that isn't what catches the Water Dragon King's eye. What matters is that a kid not even 20 noticed his subordinate's movement at full energy enhancement. Only then do we see the one being choked and gasping for air. To stop things from getting worse, the protagonist speaks up. He asks why someone so important is threatening kids, and warns that it might stain his name. The elder gets the point and says he can't let that happen. He calls his man back, and the subordinate drops the beggar to the deck like a ragdoll. Then the elder lets out his aura and asks if now is the time to hear the protagonist's explanation. That leaves him worried and frustrated. If they had only a little more time, they could have reached the Orthodox Alliance. He can't believe a monster like this showed up now. If he angers him, he might meet Hades far sooner than planned. So he explains that he was only traveling by ship when pirates attacked and threatened the common people. The elder asks if he stepped in like a knight to protect them. But the elder's aura keeps rising, and the protagonist can tell he doesn't fully buy the story. So he starts thinking fast. Then an idea hits him. He gives his clan name and says the elder probably wouldn't know it since they aren't tied to Murim. Instead, they're a family with major influence in the government. His father used to be an imperial advisor and still serves in Nanjing, looking after the emperor's grandsons. He's saying all this because his master taught him that if you want the upper hand in a war of words, show off powerful ties, and if you don't have any, lie without hesitation. But the elder doesn't care where he's from or who his father is. That makes the protagonist realize his master's tricks don't always work. The Water Dragon King says he was born a pirate and will die a pirate, and he doesn't care whether Murim or the government kills him. That answer puts the protagonist on edge, because he has to protect Nengong Song and his master, and also the dandy he beat and tied up. But what can he do against two monsters he couldn't even scratch, not even counting the bodyguard? Then he remembers another lesson from the Celestial Advisor. Negotiations have two key rules. Use what your enemy fears to shake them, or use what they like to win them over. So he asks the man to listen carefully and not jump to conclusions. Trying to get out of this alive, he says revealing his identity was never meant as a threat. What he really wants is mercy, and for the elder to overlook the dozens of ships he sank. To make that happen, he offers compensation, figuring a pirate won't hate that idea. The elder grows interested and asks if he's offering money. The protagonist presses on and asks how much he wants, but that only makes the man grin, then burst into loud laughter. The protagonist can only think the old man has lost it, like he just won the lottery. Before long, the elder steps closer and says he likes him. That makes the hero spring back in shock. The old man tells him to look up at the moon and at the people watching from above. All those sword-carrying men belong to the Orthodox Murim Alliance. Then he asks if the protagonist knows why none of them are moving, leaving him confused because the answer seems obvious. The old man says that whether they talk about justice or chivalry, in the end they're just weighing what profits them. So if even the Orthodox sects act like that, why is the protagonist willing to spend money to save everyone? He hesitates, because there's no way this man would believe his real reason is stopping the minion of chaos and saving the world. As the old man studies him, he starts to get a read on his personality, though he still can't guess how strong he might become. Still, he can't make reckless moves against someone who has nothing to lose, so there is only one choice: test him himself. He calls the boy over and says some things in this world can't be settled with money. At once, the bodyguard draws his weapon, which startles little beggar dragon. The protagonist dashes forward at once, shouting that the old man is insane. But before he can stop it, the attack is already coming. Then he realizes the strike was aimed at little beggar dragon, so he blocks it himself. The beggar freezes in shock as the protagonist yells for him to run. Little beggar dragon takes the chance and leaps off the ship, leaving the protagonist alone. But his strength still isn't enough, and a heavy blow slams into his chest. He stays on his feet through sheer will, thinking this has to end in one strike. His enemy is a martial master using enhanced energy, and if the battle drags out, he'll lose for sure. So he gathers everything into one attack, using the purest energy he has. Spiritual energy is far stronger than the internal energy stored in the core. But when the man sees it, he only smiles. The protagonist doesn't understand why until the old man attacks him from behind. He crashes to the ground, fighting to stay conscious, but in the end, he blacks out, trapped between those two monsters. Before losing himself, He thinks about how one of the great names of the unorthodox world can fight so cowardly, calling the old man a scoundrel, while the elder just smiles. Then the protagonist's vision fades. The young patriarch shouts for his uncle, but the Water Dragon King warns him not to do anything foolish. Sung feels crushing pressure just from meeting his eyes, yet his uncle risked his life to save everyone. He can't let himself stay frozen in pathetic fear, so he raises his sword, knowing he has to save him. The old man is impressed to see the boy still pushing forward with all his courage, and notices the enhanced sword energy around his blade. It's weak and incomplete, but it's definitely enhanced sword energy. Now the old man wonders where these people keep coming from. One fought back against him, and the other broke free of his energy confinement. Still, he can tell the boy isn't in good shape. His demonic nature seems to have clouded his mind. The old man lets out a small laugh and asks if he's a descendant of Changsun. But the young patriarch ignores the question completely and charges in hard. As he gets ready to kick, the old man says he can't kill him before seeing him grow into an adult. The kick isn't aimed at the young patriarch at all. It slams into the deck. The force is so huge it sends waves rolling around the ship. Sometime later, in a forest, our hero catches the smell of good food and wakes from his deep sleep. He spots a bowl of meat while the sea dragon's bodyguard watches him eat. Confused, he hesitates until someone tells him to eat. Jung San hunted and cooked it himself. He then realizes he's in the woods with the Water Dragon King, his guard, and the pirate. The old man says a growing boy should be eating meat and drinking wine, but our hero only cares about Sung and his master. Anger rises as he demands to know what happened to the others. Before he can act, the old man says he spared them and sent them to the Orthodox Murim Alliance. He adds that the Namgum clan boy was only lightly hurt and will be fine when he wakes up. Even if he isn't close with Changsun, he won't destroy a young sprout. Hearing that, our hero is relieved his disciple is safe. But right after that, his hunger hits, and the old man reminds him he already warned him. He picks up a piece of meat, wondering if it's poisoned, then stops caring and admits it tastes great. That's when he notices the old man staring at him as he eats, telling him to keep going with a sly grin like he's up to something. The scene then cuts to a medical room where someone says this is the last one. Tiny acupuncture needles are being placed into a man's body. Once it's done, the old man relaxes while the young man lies covered in needles. The elder says the Water Dragon King was strangely kind, which confuses the little dragon beggar. The old man says that even as a beggar representative, he's still an idiot. Without the Water Dragon's help, he would have had an energy deviation and become crippled. The doctor says he didn't just suppress the demonic energy, he also opened the boy's meridians. That leaves the beggar wondering why he would do that. But the old man leaves to send a letter, saying he has to calm the Sword King's anger now that the news is out. Left alone, the dragon beggar thinks back to the moment when the young patriarch charged the Water Dragon King without fear. Just as he raised his foot and poured energy into it, he smashed the deck before the young patriarch could reach him. For a moment, it looked like his eyes had returned to normal, and then, in a cold voice, the old man ordered everyone to leave. He meant the Murim Alliance members, who could only watch as he and his subordinate carried the protagonist back onto the ship. The only one left behind was the beggar, trying to help the young patriarch. Back in the present, he wonders what really happened there and why Mr. Yu was taken away. Back in the forest, the three pirates sit by the fire with our hero, and the bodyguard offers him another piece of meat. Looking at that gentle face, our hero can't believe this is the same guy who felt like a tiger in battle. And it's not just him. The other one looked like a monster before, but now he just seems like some drunk old man nearby, which makes our hero wonder how one person can feel so different. The old man then offers the boy some wine and asks how old he is. Yu takes a sip first, then answers that he's 17. That shocks the old man. He's this skilled before even turning 20. Then he asks who taught him, which immediately makes our hero suspicious. The old man presses again, wanting to know his teacher. So the protagonist says he learned from his brother-in-law from the Dam clan in Hubei. The Water Dragon King says that's part of the military region, so he knows those martial arts well. Their style is simple and powerful, nothing like the protagonist's smooth, exact moves, or that strange power he used on the subordinate, which didn't seem like normal energy. If anything, it felt far purer. Our hero is surprised he noticed what even the Sword King didn't. He asks why the old man cares so much. The old man says of course he's curious, he's never seen anyone use energy that strange. And if the boy only learned from his brother-in-law, then he has no real master in Murim. That pleases him. While the protagonist knows he can't mention the 6 Orthodox saints, then the Water Dragon King points at him and says he wants him as a disciple. The demand shocks him. The old man adds that he planned to make him pay for causing trouble, but he'll forgive it if he becomes his student. Yu's thoughts spin wildly. He's supposed to become the hero who saves Murim, so becoming a pirate's disciple makes no sense. The old man acts like it's already decided, but the protagonist quickly asks for a minute. That only annoys the Water Dragon King more, and he asks what that means. The protagonist explains that his father is a respected scholar and former imperial advisor, so he can't become a pirate's disciple. He keeps listing reasons he refuses, while the old man listens in silence. Then the man asks if a beating would help him change his mind and become obedient. That terrifying aura crashes down on the protagonist and scares him stiff. The old man goes on, saying pirates need natural talent, implying the boy was born for it. Shaken, our hero can't see any way out. As the old man rolls up his sleeves, he says the boy is thinking too much, and those thoughts need to be beaten down. Soon grunts and slaps echo through the forest. A few hours later, the fire is dead, and the bruised protagonist kneels before the old man. Asked if he's decided, he still stubbornly begs for a little more time, but when the beating is about to start again, he blurts out that he'll become his disciple. In his mind, it doesn't matter if that's what it takes, he'll do it. Knowing he can't waste time, he asks for it to be temporary, because he must find Hwangdo-Akseum and reach the Orthodox Murim alliance. He needs information about the second creature, and Hwangdo-Akseum is the key. To do that, he has to get to the alliance as fast as possible. Even with one eye swollen shut, he steels himself and pushes forward. He tells his new master no one can know he became his disciple. If that happens, he'll be like a frog stuck staring only at the Yangtze River. He says he wants to learn more, widen that river into seas, then the whole world, an answer that even impresses the old man. Still, he warns that if the boy is lying, he'll erase him and everything tied to him. Then he calls his subordinate and orders him to tell the pirates that Yu Hyun is the new young master of the river, but to keep it secret. With a hard stare, he warns that if the news leaks, they'll be punished badly. Later, the protagonist leaves in a small boat, waving goodbye to the pirates with relieved laughter. Even while crying, he tells himself this humiliation was all part of his careful plan, and now the river pirates are basically his pawns. Once he gets the elixir and the mystical creature, he'll escape that old man's grasp. Meanwhile, the Water Dragon King sits on a rock, calmly drinking. He enjoys the quiet for a moment, but it doesn't last. Someone suddenly shouts that the water demon is a bastard. It's Chang's son, furious as he storms in. He heard the Water Dragon King left his son injured and unconscious, and the old man asks what he's talking about. Then he realizes Chang's son means the young man from the ship, and says he only learned that later. The old man adds that he also heard the pirate opened his son's meridians, which surprises the Water Dragon King, but he quickly gets annoyed, wondering why Chang's son is raging instead of thanking him. Tame's son demands he hand over the protagonist, and swears he'll turn the river into a sea of blood if even one hair on the boy's head is harmed. That makes the pirate think Chang's son must be the boy's master, and the old man says they really could have that kind of bond. But this odd reaction only convinces the Water Dragon King that Chang's son is not the protagonist to master at all. Since the boy is now his disciple, he wonders what to do if he can't give him back. Those words enrage the patriarch, who starts gathering power and curses the pirate. He charges in at once and swings to cut him, but only slices his clothes. The Water Dragon King explodes, calling him a lousy swordsman. He jumps back onto a piece of wood in the river, saying that strike would have killed him if it landed. Then he shouts, asking if the old man was really trying to kill him. The patriarch snaps back that he didn't come here to play, and says he'll send him home with that ugly head of his. Hearing that insult, the pirate king gets truly furious and starts gathering his power, challenging him to a one-on-one fight to see who wins. Just as those two beasts are about to clash, the Water Dragon King's servant shows up carrying a boar he hunted himself. He pauses, curious about what he's seeing. The old man suddenly asks what the hell they're doing. He tells them to stop. Hyun already left a while ago and should be at his destination by now. The pirate jumps back onto land and says he's telling the truth. The patriarch knows that even as a pirate, this man usually doesn't lie. So he lowers his sword and thanks him for saving his son. And the old man grumbles that he could have said that much sooner. The pirate then calls over his subordinate. The man tosses him the old bottle of liquor. Catching it cleanly, he offers the patriarch a drink before he leaves, hoping to smooth things over. The old man accepts, thinking everything will be fine as long as Hyun is safe. But Hyun is nowhere near safe. Two swords are pointed right at him. A whole fleet and a crowd have him surrounded. So he says this all seems like a misunderstanding. They answer that only the Murim Alliance can sort out that misunderstanding. Hyun doesn't mind. He needed to go there anyway, so he plays along for now. Before long, the river gates open. He is taken into the city by carriage. Haemin leans out the window to look around. The city is huge and packed tight like a forest made of buildings. He can't hide how impressed he is. The man beside him remembers hearing that this boy beat the mountain bandits alone, and even fought pirates. Yet right now, he just looks like an innocent kid. Meanwhile, Haemin is thinking much bigger. If he stops the chaos ahead, he could become a hero, claim the Yu clan as his own asset, and even rise to lead the Orthodox Murim Alliance. That would be the perfect retirement plan, but first he has to find the well-dressed man. They soon reach the Alliance Palace and are told this is the military advisor's office. But when they arrive at the advisor's floor and open the door, the escort is shocked by what he sees. He instantly drops to his knees, introducing himself as the vice captain of the Celestial Dragon Squadron, and paying respects to the Alliance leader. Behind the advisor stands a man in white who greets Hein first. Hein, though, stays surprisingly calm in front of him. When the man turns, the bearded elder asks if he is Yu Hein, and we learn this is Lee Hak-sung, the White Marshal. Hein can tell that even his gentle voice feels crushing. It's not killing intent, just the weight of someone truly powerful, enough to make people freeze. He remembers his master saying that if this man had been alive and fighting on the front lines, they might have stopped the minion of chaos. After hearing the boy introduce himself properly, the old man realizes Hein is only 17 and already absurdly skilled. Those sharp blazing eyes remind him of a dragon, making him even more sure Hein met the Water Dragon King. Facing these two, Hein knows one is his master's master, and the other is the Alliance leader. Even his master's respected. He's basically been tossed into a tiger's den, so he steadies himself. The advisor asks if he was the one who caused the trouble on the Yangtze. Hein answers that his father is the imperial advisor, so he couldn't just pretend not to see people suffering under pirates. That sounds believable enough, like he acted out of justice. But the old man still wonders about the middle-aged man with him. When Hein acts confused, the questioning continues. The advisor clarifies that he means the well-dressed man fighting a pirate before Hein stepped in. Hein realizes they're talking about Huang Diaxing. He's sure the man was already questioned, but probably didn't say what Hein was really after. So all Hein needs is a good excuse for jumping into that fight. But then one of them suddenly moves to strike, and the sect leader notices the attack is aimed at the woman. He reacts at once and steps in too. At the same time, he grabs Hein, and the other man asks what he thinks he's doing. Like a true philosopher, he says that was his answer. Hein's body moved on its own to protect someone. The old man seems pleased by that, and Hein knows his act is working. He asks what happened to the man, but the advisor pushes back. Why care so much about someone he's supposedly unrelated to, especially after treating him so roughly? Hein suddenly slams his fist on the table and says he's angry. Because innocent people were nearly dragged into danger because of that man. Of course it's all an act, and they're probably about to buy it. The old man says the man is in prison, being questioned over what happened, then asks if Hein wants to see him. Hein instantly senses a trap. It was offered way too easily. They're probably trying to learn why he saved that man by watching how he reacts during the interrogation. Still, with a sly smile inside, he pretends to take the bait, since he needs to learn where the millennial sea snail is. So he says he'd be glad to meet him, especially after that man endangered others just to save himself. The elder studies Hein's answer, still not fully convinced. Even so, he says he'll notify the head guard first, while wondering how long this boy can keep up the act. As Hein is about to leave, the man asks why the Water Dragon King let him go. Hein says the pirate chose to make up for the damage by paying for the sunk ships and the treatment of the wounded. The old man immediately asks if he thinks they're idiots. By all logic, the pirate should have killed him. Huayun mockingly tells them to ask the pirate themselves. He was released after promising compensation, simple as that. For a moment, the elder looks annoyed by this brat, but they can't hold him there much longer, because that fool who dotes on his son would surely cause trouble. So the tense talk ends and Huayun is released. The messenger then turns to the leader and asks how much of Huayun's story they should believe. The answer? None of it, but the boy is definitely interesting. Looking out the window, the leader says the child's energy core is empty, which makes the other man wonder if Huayun is hiding his power. But the leader says no, he truly has nothing there. He realized it when he stopped Huayun's attack, which convinced him the boy is using some new kind of cultivation. After all, the Sword King and the Water Dragon King wouldn't care about him for no reason. He then says they should keep Huayun on their side because this child could help with what they're planning. The advisor begins unrolling the red scroll in his hands. He explains that he's trying to gather the hidden dragons from every region into one squad, but progress has been slow. Those hidden dragons are either the future leaders of their sects or the heart of each faction's strength, so they aren't easy to recruit. The old man mentions that he saw Sung's body advance to another level, thanks to the Water Dragon King. Then he suggests introducing Yu Hyun to the world, a young martial artist who fought the Black Whale Fortress alone and came back alive. He comes from a respected clan and is handsome too, basically the perfect young prodigy. They could even spread a rumor that Nam Doong, who traveled with him, has also reached a high level. But the old man says it's only a suggestion, and the rest is up to the advisor. After finishing with the elders, Huayun heads somewhere else. Looking at someone there, he clicks his tongue and calls it pathetic. It's young Sung, wrapped up like a mummy and crying for his uncle. Then the little beggar shows up and asks if Huayun is joining the Hidden Dragon team. Huayun also notices that Mr. Yu is there. Seeing how much respect the man now shows him, Huayun knows this is the perfect chance to make him his servant. The problem is how, he can't just start beating him up. And the same goes for the rest of his masters. Then he hears the beggar mention a list, saying Sadek and Maria are on it too. Huayun instantly snatches the paper while the boy protests that he shouldn't be reading it. The Hidden Dragon team is supposed to stay secret. But once Huayun checks the list, he sees all his masters are on it. There's Chansu of the Tang clan, who trains by letting snakes bite him. Huayun Hyo of Wudang can balance a full jar on the tip of his sword without spilling a drop. Huayun Gang of Shaolin meditates under a waterfall. And Jai Galmori, the celestial strategist, says the sky looks frighteningly beautiful today. Seeing all those names, Huayun starts wanting to gather every one of his masters and lead them himself. He admits he can't help getting excited about seeing everyone again, leaving the beggar wondering why he suddenly has chills. Soon it's clear Huayun plans to join the Hidden Dragon group too. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. See you next time.